And this is kind of crazy, but here we are. What's up, Remington Begg? How you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. How about you, George?
I am doing awesome. You know, it's funny because we've done interviews in the past, but today we are starting over. We're launching, we're beginning, whatever words you want to use, but Wayfinding Growth. This is amazing.
Yeah, Wayfinding Growth, the maiden voyage.
There you go. You know, and it's funny because I'm glad you brought that up because most maiden voyages, they suck, especially when you're talking about podcasting. I mean, most people are like, oh, well, what our podcast is going to be like is, and you're listening to the first episode going, maybe I'll just tune into episode 2. Well, our podcast is going to be way different. Our maiden voyage is going to be awesome because what we're going to do is we're going to, yes, tell you kind of who this podcast is for, what we're going to be doing on the podcast. But because we realize that most maiden voyages suck, we're also going to add value in this first episode. And so the listeners, viewers know, Remington, what exactly, what kind of podcast are we creating? Is it going to be the same as what they've seen out there? How are we going to be different? You know, we're always going to be different, but maybe talk to us about that a little bit.
Each episode, we're going to have a guest, and then we're going to break that episode apart. I think a lot of times we hear a lot about what we should be doing or how we should be thinking, but it doesn't really give actionable items that are things that we can take back to our businesses or take back to our life and just make happen. And so it's going to be really great to get those tangible things, the things you can walk away from the podcast and actually implement on day one that can start making an impact in your business.
Yeah, definitely. And you can really expect the episodes to be about 25, maybe 30, pushing at 35 minutes because we know that we want this to fit in your time frame. I don't want you to have a lunch in a backpack to be able to digest the information. And what's nice is we can spend a lot of time on the interview and then a lot of time really dissecting it. So, Remington, without further ado, are you ready to do this?
Let's do.
Yeah, I am ready to do this. And here's what's fun. All hands on deck. Let's hoist those sails and set a course for your company's growth voyage. Today's topic is starting a podcast or a video show, which, by the way, we're doing both right here for your business success. So let's get into this. So the first section that we're typically going to do on the podcast, Remington, is what?
So navigational instruments. So this section of the podcast, we're going to be sharing tools or a tool that will help you accomplish the week's topic. So for example, this week's topic is about starting a podcast or a video show. So we're going to be referencing these as navigational instruments. And so it might look a little bit like this.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously to get started, you're going to need tools for podcasting or for a video show. What are the 3 main areas that people are going to focus in on, Remington?
So you're going to need to have a good mic. You're going to need to have the right software, and then you're going to need to have the right editor.
Definitely. Now, let's start with good mics because, well, as you can see, Remington and I, we're twinsing today with the mics. These are the ATR 2100s. I love these, have loved them for a very long time. Used an ATR 2100 for 172 episodes of the Hubcast. Nope, not over there. Nope, not what we're talking about. You can also use the Heil PR40 or even the Blue Yeti. Those 3 mics are really great quality. They're going to give you good sound, and you're not going to sound like you're in a tin can or something like that. Now, Remington, talk about right software for a minute.
Sure. So with the software, you can use Skype. Skype's actually a really great tool. That's how we're recording this today. You can also use Zoom. Zoom's a great video conferencing software from the get-go. And then you've also got, if you're doing more like a solo, more of a solo podcast, you could even use Ecamm. I believe it's Ecamm Live. And then you've got Be Live and then also the ID3 editor as well.
Yeah, let's break that down a little bit. So one of the things I like about Zoom is that you can, say, for instance, moving forward, today it's a 2-person episode. Skype works really great. The next episode, when we actually have 3 people, we may use Zoom because it's very easy to go into speaker view and go from one person to the next person to the next person. Skype, not so much. Ecamm Live, what's nice about that is it's the easiest way to do a show on Facebook and then be able to take that file and push it over to YouTube for later viewing as well. Be Live is great. Now, ID3 Editor is the only piece of software in here that is a little bit different because it's not something to actually create the show, but it's a piece of software that you need to do the meta tags inside your show. So the description, the title, the art, this is what you're going to use to do that. Now, the other thing that you need is a write editor. And this one is really dependent upon kind of your budget. If you don't have a lot of money, you might use something like Audacity because that's completely free. If you're a Mac person, which, I mean, if you're not, no, I'm just kidding. We love you too. You're still allowed to watch and listen, but you might use GarageBand. And then if you're an Adobe nerd like myself and Remington and many of you out there, you can definitely use Audition. So this week, the tools for navigating your podcast or your show are a good mic, the right software, and the right editor. We've given you a matrix, which, by the way, is going to be on the show notes that you can go and pick and choose from to start your podcast and your show. And here in a little bit, we're going to talk about why you might want to do that for a business. Now, the next thing that I want to talk to you about, so we're coming out of the value and into what you might see in the show, is that we do not right now have a sponsor for the show. And to be honest with you, it really doesn't make sense for us to have a sponsor for maybe the first 5, 10, 15 shows because, well, we're still building the community. That is you, the viewers. And how are we going to have a sponsor if we don't know who actually comes to the watering hole, who comes to sit with us in our kumbaya moments as we're taking those voyages across seas of success, right? So we got to get you guys collected. We need to know who you are. Which, by the way, you need to hit us on Twitter at George B. Thomas or at Remington Begg and be like, hey, I'm a fan. I'm aboard the ship and ready to cruise with you guys because that will make us happy. That will make us happy. But
sure,
we do want to eventually find a sponsor. So if you are listening to this, watching this, or somebody inside of your circle says, hey, have you checked out the Wayfinding Growth show/podcast? You should sponsor that. Which, by the way, you should go tell somebody they should sponsor. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But this week, this episode is brought to you by, well, us here at Impulse Creative because we don't have a sponsor. Remington, after we do a little bit of sponsorship, because, it just makes sense to bring value and maybe get value from the show as well, there's a big section, charting the course. Why don't you explain, and by the way, viewers, listeners, after Remington explains this, we're diving deep back into the value. Why don't you kind of explain what charting the course is going to be?
Our charting the course section is where we interview the guest of the week and we cover the topics that you, the community, want to learn more about. So this week, we're covering podcasting and video shows, and I'm going to be interviewing George about his historical knowledge on podcasting. And George has started several podcasts, and most notably the Hubcast, a podcast for HubSpot users. He's also created shows like One Last Tool, Inbound Life, and Sprocket Talk. So George has also mentored other professionals who have decided to create shows of their own and for their business or personal brands.
Yeah, and it's fun to watch somebody start that journey. And I have a whole document that I run them through on things like art and intros in scalability of the show and sections. And so let's go ahead and get into this. Let's chart your course to success on podcasting or video shows.
So George, tell me about who needs to be the captain of this ship. Talk about who the right person is and what they need to kind of move forward with in order to get started.
Yeah, definitely, Remington. Now, here's the thing. Most times on our show, the captain of the ship is going to be a certain person, the CMO, the CFO, the CEO, the janitor. In this case, it can honestly be anybody. Anybody can be the captain of the ship. However, there are a couple traits, I will say, that the captain has to have for the show to be successful. One, they have to be willing to put themselves out there. Look, you're going to make mistakes, especially on your maiden voyage. You're not going to look as comfortable as you should. You might flub up your words, but you need to just be able to be like, hey, I'm going to put myself out there. That's one. Two, the captain has to be really passionate about the topic that they're going to cover. So one thing I'll just say historically with the Hubcast, the reason that it made it to 172 episodes, and I think we might have missed 2 weeks in 3 years, was that I was extremely passionate about the topic, which was HubSpot or inbound marketing or the use of the HubSpot tool. And so that leads me to number 3 is that they have to be consistent. Like you can't do 5-7 episodes of a podcast and think that, oh my gosh, we're going to have, a bazillion people and we're going to have 10 sponsors. And like that just doesn't happen. You have to consistently create value. And so you have to put yourself out there. You have to be passionate about the topic, and you have to be consistent, right? So those are the 3 things that the captain should have. Now, the captain can be anybody. And I would say that for any business, they should try to define who that captain is and get them interested in, hey, do you want to create a show? Because and we're going to talk about this, the byproducts of creating a show, the byproducts of being a host or a co-host, almost unmeasurable.
Where would you say most companies have already journeyed? Like where are most companies now in the world of podcasting?
Yeah, so most companies, Remington, they're still at the dock. Like, and some of them might be in the dry dock, to be honest with you. Like, they're still parked. They haven't even had that little machine come and lift them up and put them in the water so they can set sail. Like, they're not thinking about it. And those that are thinking about it, maybe they've tried, but they've had a wreck, right? They got behind the wheel. They went a little bit out. They hit a buoy. They got a hole in their ship, and they were like, oh, we're done. And they didn't patch that hole and try to set sail again. That's historically, most companies have not even thought about it, or if they've tried it, and they tried it back when podcasting was new versus now when it's like Apple Play is in the car and Spotify's doing podcasts and Google Play is doing podcasts, and your podcast can be on iHeartRadio, right? So they were those early adopters. They didn't think it worked. They don't think it works now. And everybody is like jumping on the voyage of video and forgetting about the audio value that they could be adding to a ton of communities. So historically, that's where most companies, not all, but most companies are with podcasting or video shows.
Cool. So when we're talking about that, then, we've got, I think a lot of companies, especially with digital marketing nowadays, go straight towards like, what's the ROI, and so I can imagine that just like any other organic, marketing tactic, like it takes a while to start seeing some ROI. Why don't you speak a little bit about what that ROI starts to look like and kind of some timeframes that you experienced on the Hubcast, for instance?
Yeah, definitely, Remington. And here's the thing. What I want everybody to understand about ROI is that could be completely dependent upon the goals that you set out for your podcast. You might only set it out to be a relationship builder. And if you build relationships, guess what? It has great ROI. You might create it just so you can get some more leads, people who start to trust you and want to actually do business with you and turn it into a sales process. There's ROI in that. You may start it because you want to build a community and have sponsorships and drive revenue that way. Fine. Then that's how you'll measure your ROI. Or you might create a show and say, I want to do all of those. Like, I want to do affiliate links. I want to do sponsorship. Yeah, Remington's like, me.
Sign me up.
Yeah, sign me up, right? And that's fine, but make sure you put those goals out there. Now, there's some things to think about as you go through this, right? So with the Hubcast, first of all, let me just get to the punchline. We did well over 6 figures worth of income off of the Hubcast. And that was through selling our own products and services and also having some sponsorships. But that didn't start immediately. So we didn't start doing sponsorships, Remington, until about episode 56, because we realized that at episode 56, we had created enough of a community that somebody who was willing to give us their hard-earned dollars would get the value back out of it. And that's the other thing. If you're going to do a podcast, if you're going to do these things, you have to have some integrity. Maybe that's number 4 on what the captain has to have. This can't be I'm going to do a podcast and get rich quick scheme. It's I'm going to do a podcast or a video show and add a ton of value to the world, and then see over time, episode 10, episode 20, episode 30, how I can actually maybe get some value back out of the value that I've been giving.
That's a huge thing. So when we're talking about this, it's the value that you're giving, right? So we don't want to just sit around and be speaking heads. And especially video, we can be dancing and no one can see that on audio, but the big thing is like figuring out what your value that you're actually going to provide to the audience, I think is a key thing that you just said there. So that's a huge one. We'll make sure that's for sure number 4.
Yeah, definitely. And here's the thing. The value that you're going to get on this show, because this is kind of weaving in what they're going to get and what historically, sure. I've kind of been through, is that there are going to be things that we talk about on this show that you may be doing at your business, may be doing badly at your business, or may not have even thought about doing at your business because you don't know what you don't know. And that's really the value that we're going to give, is we're going to bring those things to light, and then we're going to dissect the crap out of them and make them very executable for you. Anyway,
yeah.
That is really the historical journey and a little bit of what we're going to add to the community.
Cool. So when we're talking about going back to our questions about podcasting, so what would you say is the biggest thing stopping companies from even getting started?
There's actually
fear.
A couple of things. Yeah. I mean, one thing is fear, like people getting in front of the mic, getting in front of the camera. And look, not everybody has to do a video show. You can do an audio show. So it's funny. Some people will say, hey, I got a face for radio. Ha 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 ha. Nobody really cares about your face if you're adding a crap ton of value. They just care about the words coming out your mouth. But if it makes you feel more comfortable, then do just an audio podcast. I mean, that's where we started. The Hubcast originally was just an audio podcast, and then it turned into video at a later date, right? Now, what I will say is that you need to understand when it comes to, getting past the fear, like just doing it over and over and over again, that fear goes away. Like think about the first time that you rode a roller coaster. Like you were scared out of your mind. But now you go, Remington's like, no, I wasn't. I love that junk.
No, I still don't. My wife can do that.
Well, see, that's the thing. I don't, we just learned something new, community. Remington doesn't do roller coasters, and either do I. I'll walk around the park with the family, and the kids and wife will do them. But if I was supposed to be on metal rails and do loop-de-loops, I would have been born with wheels for hands and feet. That's the way I feel. Anyway, back to the reality of this is the fear will go away once you do it over and over and over again. It just becomes second nature. But other than that, another big piece of this that is they just don't understand the technology, right? And so they feel like they have to have thousands of dollars worth of technology. They need somebody to know how to edit it. All these things. And what I will say is, Remington and I are using ATR 2100s. They're about $50. We've got these little arms that hold the mic so that we can keep constant sound. They're about $15. The editors are super easy to use. And so once you hop into an editor, you can Google how to edit it. The thing is, fear, technology, and the thought of not having enough budget are really the top 3 things that keep people from starting a podcast or doing the show.
Cool. Awesome. So where should companies chart their course towards if they want to get started with this kind of thing?
So what I would do to chart a course is I would figure out what community are you trying to add value to? I would figure out inside of that community, what are the major pain points or topics that you can cover? And then the real charting, the magic, and I've learned this from multiple shows, putting multiple shows together. The real magic is coming up with a show outline that is scalable and repeatable. And what I mean by that is it should be sections, right? So for the Hubcast, it was tweets of the week. It was HubSpot strategy. It was question of the week. It was agency spotlight. It was hashtag one thing. Just different pieces that were consistently there or could be added in at different episodes as needed. Just like this podcast that you're listening to now or watching, we're going to have, the navigational tools, the chart your course, the captain killing it. We haven't even got there yet.
Yeah.
Hang on. We'll get there. Don't get too excited. It's going to be fun. But there's sections. And so we know that we can just plug in valuable information into each section. And so that is where I would start, is what community do we want to gather? What problems are we going to solve for that community? And how can we make the show scalable and repeatable? Because that ties back to the fact that it has to be consistent. The show has to be consistent. So lowering the bar or barrier to creating each episode, where you can do it in 10, 15, 30 minutes instead of spending an hour, 2 hours just putting your show notes together, is going to be really, really magical.
No, that's really great, George.
Yeah, Remington, I just hope that people get value out of that section and that they realize, hey, Johnny or Billy or Susie would be a great captain. They're passionate. They're always on time. They're consistent in their work. They're going to be consistent in the show. There is this community. There are these problems that we can solve. I just hope people get value out of that. If they have questions for us, obviously they can reach out to us on Twitters at Remington Begg. I'm at George B. Thomas. But, the next thing is with this show, so we're coming out of value and kind of letting you know about the show. One of the things that we're going to have is weekly show notes and a newsletter deep dive, monthly deep dive. So the show notes are what they are, right? We're going to have, for instance, the navigational tools. We're going to have links to those tools. We're going to be doing all the things that show notes should do for you, and that is add more value that you can see and get to the things that we talk about, because otherwise it's just hard to go and find them. The deep dive newsletter, we've already talked to you about how Remington and I are going to dissect the crap out of each one of these episodes and make things executable. The newsletter is going to be even deeper than that. We're going to list hey, out of this month, it might be something like this. Out of this month, here's the 4 things that any business should be doing yesterday. Or, this month we really learned that people should be diving into this one thing. And so if out of any newsletter out there, this is the one newsletter I would say, hey, I'm excited to put together, but if I was not putting it together, I would want to be getting. The way you can get that is go over to wayfindinggrowth.com. That's going to be the main page, and you're going to see a place that you can actually just, hey, give us a little details. Boom. We're going to send it to you. We're not going to spam the crap out of you.
And it might even sign you up with a chat bot.
Oh, snap. And now you might have just heard that. I can bet my bottom dollar, which I hope I never get to, by the way. Everybody talks about their bottom dollar. I don't know if I ever want to see that sucker, but
I'll bet my top dollar.
Yeah, I'll bet my top dollar that we'll talk about chatbots on Wayfinding Growth at some point, sometime. I'm just saying, because I know the guy who's across the mic right now from me. And he's a little nerdy on this thing called conversational marketing. But this week, we're talking about podcasting and we're talking about video shows. And we get to move into Remington, this week's Captain Killing It. And let me just explain a little bit of that. Captain Killing It is where we're either going to find somebody on the internet who is doing a really, really great job or the opposite of that. Hashtag fail. And we're going to let them know that that's really not how you're supposed to navigate the seas of social. if you know what I'm saying. But this week, we actually do have somebody that is killing it. I found this person because of Remington. He shared out some information on LinkedIn, I believe it was, and I started diving into that one episode. Yes, this is a podcast. Started to learn a little bit more about the company and what they were doing. And so this week's Captain Killing It is a company called Tetra. And Tetra, awesome. Do you want to maybe explain what Tetra does, and then I'll explain how they're actually killing it, Remington?
Yeah, so Tetra is Tetra's a company or software as a service that companies can use as an internal wiki. And the great thing about it is, we use Slack at Impulse. And so being able to tie right into Slack, it makes it so that all the resources and information are available in one / command. So it's been really great for us to kind of formalize our processes and make resources available to everyone.
Yeah, it is awesome. And here's why they're killing it. They are navigating the choppy seas of creating their own podcast. The podcast is called Org Uncharted. The host, Jay Acunzo, the company we already talked about, Tetra. If you want to say, hey, we heard about you on the Wayfinding Growth, or you want to just chat it up with them, it's at Jay Acunzo and at Team Tetra. The episode that I listened to, by the way, I told you you'd hear about chatbots, was you shared David Cancel from Drift. They're killing it. I'm sure they'll be on the show in Captain Killing It at some point. But you can go to tetra.co/culture-codes/org-uncharted. By the way, this is one of those moments that I was talking about where show notes come in handy, because there'll be a link in the show notes. You'll be able to click it. That'll take you to the podcast, but it's super dope. They're doing a great job. And that's why they're killing it.
That podcast is really great. I think some of the things that they talked about, and one of the things that I like about their podcast, and I think we're going to be doing a similar theme, is it's not just about marketing, and it's not just about sales. It's literally about getting your company's crap together and making it so that you have that North Star, as we call it in Impulse Creative. So I really am super behind what those guys are doing, and Tetra's a great company too. So shout out to Captain Killing It.
Captain Killing It. And here's what I'll say. You make a good point. And we probably should have told you this at the beginning of the show. This is not a marketing podcast. This is not a sales podcast. This is not a service podcast. This is really a sales, marketing, service, and business growth in general podcast. And what I would classify this more than anything is how do I get crap done podcast. That's really the goal of this.
So, when we started talking about this idea, it was so much about, we didn't want this to be another marketing or sales podcast, because there's a lot of people out there putting some really great info. And the other side is, there's a lot more to business growing than marketing and sales. I mean, we're in that segment and we help people with it all the time, but there's so much more than just marketing and sales. So making it so that we could kind of tie that in, but then also bring in experts that talk about a lot of things. Like, I'm excited about a couple of speakers that we're working on lining up around accounting and knowing your numbers, to, visualizing data and understanding and making sure everyone knows what's going on, all the way through to how to build your culture the right way. I think there's going to be some really fun pieces that we can not only hear about, but then unpack later. It's going to be pretty legit.
Yeah, definitely. And here's the thing. Life is not always like unicorns, flowers, sunsets. Sometimes there's the ugly, the destructible, the stormy seas. Or
that's right.
There's a place on the planet called the Bermuda Triangle, which creeps the crap out of people.
You want to know a fun fact?
What's a fun fact
is I actually lived in the Bermuda Triangle when I was younger, and we sailed through it numerous times. But literally, lived on a house in Bermuda, technically in the Bermuda Triangle, and I survived. I'm still here.
Which explains quite a bit, probably, viewers and listeners. But here's the thing. The Bermuda Triangle for our show, which, by the way, that is really cool. Because all I can say is I'm from Ohio. But anyway, the Bermuda Triangle, what we're going to typically do on the show is we'll ask questions like, what makes this impossible for companies? Why do those who try fail when attempting the voyage? Or who's the pirate to watch out for? And so what I'll say on this for podcasting or the show is that the pirate to watch out for is an organization that you have to get like 7 people to finalize something. Like if you've tried to do content creation and there's like 5 people that have to read the article before you can post it on your blog, that's the pirate, right? So you have to be able to just be fluid in your content creation. Like there's a pattern that you're going to have to get into where you're recording on a certain day, you're editing on a certain day, you're posting on a certain day. And so that pipeline, that runway, that train tracks, whatever metaphor, analogy you want to add to it has to be wide open and ready. So that's really the thing to watch out for. Again, too, is what I'll say another pinpoint for the triangle on here would be the lack of patience, right? So we talked about consistency, but the negative to that is you have to have an obnoxious amount of patience to do episode 12, 50, 78, 102, and then it starts to pull off. So it's got to be easy to navigate those rails. You've got to have patience to get through this. And one last thing that I'll say that could be the Bermuda Triangle to the podcast or the show is this one fact. And that is, in your mind, you feel like you have to add value to thousands of people, instead of realizing that for every show, if you just added value to one person, that episode was absolutely worth it. Be scalable in your own mind to the actual dent that you're going to make into the universe. Don't get hung up on the numbers. Get hung up on the relationships and the value that you're going to give. And then, like Remington, you'll be able to live in the Bermuda Triangle and still live to tell about it.
That's fun.
That is fun. What's great is we've kind of reached our outro. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to do with the guests is we're going to say, hey, thanks for the value. We're going to give them a place for them to give their socials. So I'm at George B. Thomas. He's at Remington Begg. We're going to give the guest an opportunity to say one last thing, which we'll do #OneThingTakeaway. And then we'll say some fun things. So Remington, I'm going to spin this on you. You didn't know this was coming, but what is really from doing the first episode, from actually launching a show, like what is your #OneThingTakeaway?
My one thing takeaway is to make sure that you are directly connected to the internet on your laptop. No, but all reality, like make sure you've got everything hooked up and it's direct connected, because Wi-Fi can be unpredictable. And odds are you will have no idea from this episode, but just trust me, it's been a journey. But but if I could have another one thing, I think that it's, get in and do it. I would call it a video show now. I've got 33 episodes for conversational marketing, and the first one was crap. But after I kept doing them, you go back to, who are you trying to get? The first few, I think the grit behind it was realizing that you could do it. But as soon as people started going, oh my God, this helped me so much, I was like, I'm good. This is fantastic. So make sure that you're focusing on that one person, and make sure you have really good connection to the internet.
Yeah, it has been a journey. We're going to try to edit this bad boy up as well as possible. You'll have to let us know. I do want to thank you. Remington wants to thank you for your engagement, your listenership. If you do have any questions on the topics that we cover moving forward, you can reach out to him. He's Remington at impulsecreative.com. I'm George at impulsecreative.com. You can hit us up on the Twitters as well. We're pretty much on any social, but Twitter is just easier. Let us know where you're trying to navigate your business as well, because this podcast podcast, this show really is for you. Look, if you're listening to the show, make sure you go over to iTunes, leave a rating and review. If you're watching this show on YouTube, then go ahead and hit that little bell, subscribe to our channel, give us your thoughts in the comments, and share this show with fellow Wayfinders. You know, Remington, that's one thing. Like Wayfinding Growth. And we did not talk about what a wayfinder is. We should probably, before we end the maiden voyage, as we set out from the sea of mediocrity, we should let them know. Yes, I got that into the show. That's a joke, an inside joke. Everybody will have to ask us about the sea of mediocrity. But Remington, why don't you just do a quick, before I give us kind of our exit here, a quick rundown on what a wayfinder is and why that's important to the show.
Basically, a wayfinder is someone who is navigating the seas. And the big thing behind it is, you know, in order to help people figure out where they're going, or in order to get, you know, to where they're going, they have to understand where they're coming from. And it's very much about the constellations and understanding, you know, navigational direction. And it fits right into business. A lot of times people don't know where they're going. They're flying by the seat of their pants. And by being intentional about their growth and being intentional about where they want their business to go, it can really unlock a lot of potential in their businesses. And so, you know, we've coined the term Wayfinders as what we call our team at Impulse Creative. And it just naturally rolled right into the name of the podcast, because wayfinding is actually doing that thing, while wayfinders are the individuals who do.
So, fellow Wayfinders, get ready. We're going to have some great journeys on Wayfinding Growth. And as you leave the dock of mediocrity, may your journey be short. May the seas be calm and your vessel and its crew reach the destination that we are all sailing towards. And that is the island of success.